Council President Rosado, members of the Court of Common Council, Treasurer Cloud, Speaker Ritter, and our Hartford delegation, members of the Board of Education, my colleagues in city government, and residents of the city of Hartford, good evening. Last year, I did my State of the City address from the Swift factory on an old shop floor that we pledged to transform into a new library branch for the Northeast neighborhood. Today, the funding for that project is fully in place and the planning process is already underway. Tonight, I wanted to do my State of the City address not from a place that we hope to transform, but from one that we already did. I'm here at the Park Street Library branch, which opened just a few months ago after 3 decades of waiting by the Frog Hollow community. And I want to do a few other things a little different tonight. First of all, since nobody really wants to watch somebody just read a speech, I'm going to do this State of the City address without a written speech. I hope you'll be a little bit more forgiving. I also would like to start on a personal note. The past few months, I had to undergo a couple of surgeries, and I just wanted to say thank you. First of all, to my family, to Sarah and our kids and my parents. Second, to my senior leadership team at City Hall, to everybody who stepped up in such a big way, but especially to Thea Montanez, our Chief Operating Officer, who shoulders so much and does so much for our city. I cannot thank her enough. And to everybody who reached out with a phone call or with a note, I cannot tell you how much that meant to me. I will never, ever forget it, and I will be forever grateful. Thank you. We've been through a lot the past couple of years. We've lost 400 of our neighbors to the coronavirus. We've seen a rise in gun violence like a lot of cities. Kids lost time with teachers and with friends. Small businesses struggled, some closed. The pandemic hit every single person and every family deeply. Differently, of course, but deeply. And yet through all that, our community came together in some pretty remarkable ways. And I want to say special thanks to our City of Hartford team, which stepped up in some remarkable ways. Again and again and again, from our firefighters to our rec counselors, from our police officers to our sanitation crews, from HR to our health department, and everybody else on Team Hartford. You have done extraordinary work, facing extraordinary pressures, not just at office, but through this pandemic, pressures at home and in so many other ways. So thank you. We talked a lot about the pandemic and about our work to battle the pandemic. But tonight, I want to focus on our recovery. And in particular, I want to focus on the American Rescue Plan and how we're using the ARP resources. Because of the leadership of President Biden and our congressional delegation, Senator Blumenthal, Senator Murphy, Congressman Larson, the City of Hartford got an allocation of $112 million to be spent over 3 years. That's not including the larger allocation that went directly to the Hartford Public Schools. That is a lot. But of course, the needs of our community are huge. And so we have to make sure that those dollars, every single one of those dollars, goes as far for our city as we possibly can. Working hand in hand, the City Council and I put together a plan to invest those resources. And we did it before most cities even began the process. We wanted to make sure that we were responding to the urgent needs that were exacerbated by the pandemic. And at the same time, wanted to make sure that we were making some investments for the long term so that the benefits of this ARP does not disappear when the dollars do. So tonight, I want to talk about how we're using those resources. Our first priority was investing in young people and helping our young people to recover and reconnect and heal after everything they've been through. We've already given grants, our Hartford Unity grants, to 68 organizations that serve more than 11,000 young people throughout our city. Those are organizations big and small, from Ebony Horsewomen to Charter Oak Boxing Academy, from Hartford Proud to the Center for Latino Progress, and dozens more. Altogether, it's $7.5 million committed so that our young people can get connected to coaches and mentors and support systems and hopefully just have a lot of fun. In addition to that, we built the largest out-of-school sports program that Hartford's seen in recent memory in partnership with Active City Hartford Youth Sports Collaborative. We invested $1.5 million in the Boys and Girls Club so that they could not just deliver their great services at their brand new club in the Southeast, but so that they could do more at their other clubs, including and especially in the Blue Hills, the Northwest Club that had been dormant for a while. We invested another $1.5 million in our Hartford Youth Service Corps. The Youth Service Corps had its 5th anniversary last year. It's already served about 1,500 young people in our city. It's one of the most powerful programs and partnerships that we have. About 1/3 of the young people in our Youth Service Corps have been justice involved. Many have been DCF involved. Some have been homeless. Every single one of them is talented and capable and deserves a chance to build the future that they want. And because of the Youth Service Corps, they have the chance to earn what is in most cases their first paycheck while getting the support of the amazing coaches and teachers at our piece of the pie. And because of that ARP investment, we're able to add 100 more spots each year so that every year 350 young people can be members of the Youth Service Corps. We also want to make sure that we're not just connecting young people to short-term job opportunities, but to careers. And so we've built some new models for job pipeline, job preparation. The best example is a new partnership with Girls for Technology and Galaxy Solutions. With our funding, they built an Earn While You Learn 10-week training program that ends in a guaranteed job at a great Hartford-based company in IT. And we've set aside a total of $3 million to build similar pipelines to careers in high-growth industries. We've worked hard to bring tech jobs to Hartford. We want to work equally hard to make sure that Hartford residents get the benefit of those jobs. So we knew we had to invest in our young people. Our other top priority is one that we wish we didn't have to choose, but we do. As I said before, we've seen a spike in gun violence like a lot of cities, and we've seen an especially dramatic rise in fatal gun violence, which I think is a reflection of the fact that a lot of the violence we're seeing is very, very personal. Our police department and law enforcement is an important part of responding to that. And people have said that around the country, police departments have stepped back, not the HPD. Last year, they took more illegal guns off the street than in any year since they started counting. They've also already solved 3/4 of the homicides that happened last year, and they're still working on the rest. And importantly, they built a new non-fatal shooting team that was focused on non-fatal shootings with the same investigative intensity that they bring to homicides, and focused on building relationships and trust with victims so that they could solve more of those non-fatal shootings. And because of that, they've increased the solve rate for non-fatal shootings by about 250%. Taken together, what that means is that if you commit an act of violence in our city, you should expect to get caught, and you should expect to pay the price. But of course, I'm deeply grateful to our law enforcement for the work that they do. But law enforcement cannot get at the underlying drivers of gun violence in this or any other community. And so when it came to using our ARP resources, we focused on community safety through community partnerships. Our first important partnership was to expand the Reentry Welcome Center. They've long been in City Hall, but because of nearly $1 million investment of ARP dollars, they'll be able to open up a new home on Windsor Street where they'll be able to serve more people with more staff and more resources, creating a real hub for reentry services. In addition to that, we're in the process of building and will soon officially launch the first hospital-based violence intervention program in Hartford in partnership with our 3 hospital systems and with the leadership of Connecticut Children's, and with tremendous partnership from Hartford Communities That Care and Mothers United Against Violence. Let me tell you why that matters. We have found that 1 in 5 people who pulls a trigger to shoot a gun at someone else in our community has been a victim of violence themselves in the past. And the hospital-based violence intervention program is about seizing that moment, using that chance when somebody is in the hospital as a victim to try to get them connected to support and to treatment to address the underlying issues that put them in the path of violence to begin with. In addition to that, we're working to fill another gap in our system of services in Hartford, focused on young women. Partnering with ROCA, we're going to be working to bring stability and safety to the lives of 250 or more young women in the city of Hartford, many of whom are also justice involved and who need that relentless outreach and engagement and support. We're not directly funding using our ARP resources to expand the Compass Peace Builder program, but because of our investment in ROCA and in the Youth Service Corps, we were able to bring in an additional $8.5 million from Dalio Education and from the Hartford Foundation, part of which will go to Compass Peace Builders program to put more peace builders, more violence intervention specialists out there on the streets, and also to make sure that we're providing them with the training that they need and the compensation that they deserve. In addition to all of that, Congressman Larson has partnered with us to secure an additional $900,000 for Mothers United Against Violence and Hartford Communities That Care. And our senators partnered with us to secure $1.4 million to build our new Hartford Youth Violence Intervention Program, which is focused on a small number of young people who are engaged actively in violence and who need intensive engagement to help get them on a different track. I wish that I could promise you that because of all of that, we'll see our number of shootings go down this year. I can't promise that. I pray to God that it's true. But what I can tell you is that we are committing more resources to community safety through community partners than at any time in Hartford's history. And the same thing can be said about our support for small businesses. During the pandemic, over the last couple of years, we used our coronavirus relief funds along with matching funds from the Hartford Foundation to provide $3 million in grants to hundreds of Hartford small businesses in every single neighborhood, the overwhelming share of them owned by women or minority entrepreneurs. A lot of our businesses made it through, and hopefully our grants helped. Those grants were not loans, but grants. No red tape, no need to repay. But there were many businesses that did not survive. And we can see their absence in the vacant storefronts in our downtown and in our neighborhoods alike. And that's why we built the HeartLift program in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. It's a $6 million program to fund the build-out costs for new businesses that are establishing themselves in vacant spaces, whether it's the downtown or in our neighborhoods. We've already given grants to businesses that are opening on Garden Street and Capitol Avenue and Pratt Street. We've received dozens more applications, and I think you'll be able to see this difference. In addition to that, we know that there are a lot of businesses that would grow if they could access capital, but they can't. And so we used $3 million to fund a revolving loan program through HEDCO to invest in our local businesses to create jobs for Hartford residents. Because the way that an avenue or commercial corridor feels is a part of the business climate and matters to small businesses, we're also launching a new neighborhood ambassador program. It's in partnership with the Open Hearth and with the Hartford Foundation. And those who we hire will be getting a second chance. Our avenues will be getting a whole lot more love and care. We know that connectivity is a critical part of competitiveness right now. And one of our biggest gaps has been on North Main Street. So we're investing $750,000 to build out fiber on North Main so that our businesses can get connected to quality, high-speed internet so that they can grow. Beyond that, we've set aside funding for facade improvements, for more flexible loans so we can seize opportunities to help companies that see the chance to grow. And another set of funds to help accelerate the growth of our innovation system, especially in tech. On top of all of that, we're also investing a total of $7 million in the arts, which is a part of economic recovery and economic revival, because we need to support those activities, whether it's local musicians or artists or concerts or events throughout the summer that help show the vibrancy of this city. And for the first time in a long time, we set aside some funds to tell Hartford's story, because we want people to see what Hartford looks like when our theaters are full and our stadiums are full and people are dancing salsa on Pratt Street. So those are the things that we're doing that respond to the urgent needs right now, that respond to what the pandemic has wrought with an extraordinary infusion of resources to try to lift us up. But as I said at the start, we also want to make sure that we are making investments that allow us to get the benefit of these resources for years and years to come, so we can see and feel the difference even after the dollars are gone. And to do that, we can do things like fixing up blighted buildings, activating vacant lots around our city, pursuing neighborhood projects that have been long sought. I'll give you a few examples. First of all, to come back to where I started, we're using $10 million to build 2 new library branches. The first is that Swift Factory Library branch for the Northeast that I mentioned. The second is the expansion of the Albany Avenue Library branch into the historic Northwest Jones School next door, a threatened historic building that will now have the chance to be a beautiful part of the expanded Albany Avenue Library. We're also trying to create spaces that create opportunities in other ways, like the expansion of the Parkville Market. Parkville Market was a pandemic success story. It has created opportunities for dozens of small businesses, and it has already created about 150 local jobs. With our investment, leveraging private investment on top, they'll be expanding the market into the 2 vacant buildings next door, creating more opportunity for more businesses and creating more jobs. And because we're focused on comprehensive development, we're also putting an additional $5 million to leverage more private investment in transforming blighted industrial buildings and vacant lots on Bartholomew Avenue, the heart of the Parkville Arts and Innovation District. But that's just one neighborhood where we're working. If you go back up to Albany Avenue, right across from the new expanded Albany Avenue Library branch, we've invested $5 million to match an additional $5 million from CRDA to finally develop the corner of Albany and Woodland. And we've listened to what the neighborhood wants. To complete to close that gap in the retail along Albany Avenue, to have a sit-down restaurant where the community can gather. And we're also building into that development a new home for our city's health department, so that all of our residents can find a health department that's more central and more accessible. That's just one of many projects on Albany Avenue. In addition to that, we're fixing up the blighted and burned out buildings across from Quirk Middle School. We're investing alongside private investors in a series of residential rehabs along the avenue. If you go up to Barber Street, we've set aside $5 million, just a couple blocks away from the Swift Factory, for Barber Street revitalization. We're making the first down payment on that effort in the coming weeks as we bring down and demolish the old Snyder's grocery store, which has sat deteriorating and blighted for more than half a century. Most of our investment in economic and community development is in our neighborhoods. But of course, our downtown was hit pretty hard by this pandemic too. And that matters to all of us, because when our big office buildings sit empty, that hurts our tax base. And that means we've got fewer resources to invest in all of the things that our community needs. So we set aside $6 million for downtown property stabilization by activating our downtown, and another $4+ million so that we can make sure we, over the long term, secure enough hotel rooms that we can keep getting the convention business that drives economic activity throughout our city. In addition to all of that, we are focused on creating home ownership opportunities. We're setting aside $4 million for investment in SINA and NINA and the Land Bank and Habitat for Humanity, so they can take blighted buildings or vacant spaces and create new home ownership. We're dedicating $3.8 million so that we can rehabilitate and build new the deteriorating old MLK apartments, 50 new quality affordable units. All of that is a part of building for the long term. That's the essence of our plan. I know I've left some things out, but you can read the whole thing on our website, hartfordct.gov, and I hope that you do. I didn't mention some other things that are not as exciting but are still important, like our investment in the pump stations that are critical to our flood control system, or completion of some streetscape work, or funding additional capital projects that we just need to get done. But that's our plan. We've worked hard to make sure that we could put a plan in place quickly but carefully and start implementing it responsibly. And again, I want to say thank you to our congressional delegation and to the Biden administration for making it possible to make these investments that would never have been possible without that help. But those are not the only investments we're making. Because we've been disciplined and careful in our budgeting and in our management, we've also been able to set aside resources to make some other investments that we've long needed. Whether that's in fixing up long blighted buildings or helping to put city-owned buildings that have been vacant back on the tax rolls, whether it's investing in our infrastructure, as I mentioned, whether it's investing in a new public safety radio system, which we desperately need, or setting aside the funding to make sure that the new HEART team that we just launched, our team of civilian crisis responders that responds in place of law enforcement to situations where individuals are in mental health crisis, that effort can be sustained and fully funded for at least 4 years, so we know we can build it and prove that it works and sustain it beyond. We've also done that without borrowing a single dollar over the last 5 years. And we've been able to build up our reserves as we did it. And that's why year over year, we've gotten upgrade after upgrade from our rating agencies. We've also worked hard to bring in new resources everywhere we possibly could. To give you just one example, the Promise Neighborhoods program, a $30 million 6-year grant from the Federal Department of Education, allows us to build a cradle-to-career support system modeled on the Harlem Children's Zone. With the leadership of Connecticut Children's and with a lot of community partnerships, we aim to try to lift up young people throughout the North Hartford Promise Zone. That's the kind of work that is vital to breaking the cycle of intergenerational poverty and changing the trajectory of our community over the long term. So we're doing a lot. But we've been through a lot, and we have to make sure that we stay the course. We have to stay disciplined, so we continue to set aside resources to make these investments in the future. We have to make sure we stick with our long-term financial plan, and that's especially important this year. And let me tell you why. This year is a revaluation year. It's a complicated year. We've seen residential values go up. We've seen commercial values, in many cases, go down. We cannot control the price of properties or the market value we've got to place on them. But what we can control, at least a little bit, is the property tax rate, the mill rate. And I want to make a promise to you tonight. When I submit my budget next month, it will include a mill rate reduction. It won't be as big a reduction as I wish that it could be, but it will help at least a little. It'll get our mill rate down below 70 for the first time in more than 15 years. And it will be the largest reduction in our property tax rate in more than 30 years. I would not make that promise if I wasn't equally sure that we could sustain that lower mill rate for at least the next 5 years, so long as we stay as disciplined in the next 5 as we have in the last 5. If you think back to where we were 5-6 years ago, we were on the brink of bankruptcy. We didn't know what the future held for our city. But we knew that we had to tackle it head on, and we were sure that we were going to come back. We made tough decisions. We built partnerships with our businesses, with our unions, with our legislators. We put in place a long-term plan. We stuck to it. We began to build, and we did build momentum. Coming into 2020, we had more energy and activity and investment in this city than we'd seen in decades. The pandemic knocked us back, but that's okay, because this is a city that does not give up, full of people that do not give up. That's why I wanted to do this speech here tonight at the Park Street Library branch, because this beautiful building is a monument to patience and to perseverance and to partnership, and to what we can do if we set our minds on something and do it together. We don't give up, and we know how to mount a comeback. And that's why, despite everything we've been through, I believe that we can take advantage of the opportunities we've got and bring this city not back to where we were, but to someplace better. And it's why I can tell you that I believe with confidence that the state of our city is strong and getting stronger. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the United States of America, and God bless the city of Hartford.